What's going on, everyone? So with one episode left, I think it's a safe bet to say that Fatima is probably getting birth to the baby, right? Like, you see Fatima and her belly is already starting to grow. She's having this kind of expedited pregnancy because clearly it hasn't been 9 months. But Elgin, you see him kind of feeding her the blood and kind of getting this process expedited. And Fatima is probably going to give birth in the next episode to this monster. Well, the question then becomes, now what, right? So do they just like abandon the monster? Does Fatima keep the monster? Should they keep the monster, right? So one question you have to ask, okay, if the pregnancy gets expedited and she gives birth to this baby, right? This baby monster, does that baby monster age differently than normal, right? Like, so is like every month a year? So in like 6 months or whatever, the baby maybe is like full grown, right? And then like what's full grown in the monster world, right? Like, how old are some of those monsters? Yeah, some of those monsters might be thousands of years old. Some of those monsters may be hundreds of years old. Some of them may be, within a couple years ago, right? Like, who knows? Like, everything is very vague thus far about the monsters. But we see the pregnancy basically being done in, a month, if that. So if she can have a 9-month term and let's say at the longest 2 months, right? Which I don't even think it's been that long, right? But like, let's say through that process you could do that, right? Like, okay, well then what happens when the baby is born? Does the baby, does it take a year and now the baby's fully grown? Is it 3 years? Is it 5? Right? But regardless, at some point you're going to have the baby be a baby. And just like humans can be influenced through the growth and development of, their environment, the parental state, right? Does keeping the baby and raising it to have kind of this weapon to go against the town, is that something that makes sense for this group, right? Imagine if you had a monster that could take out the other monsters, right? Now, here's the thing, though, is that if you take out the other monsters, right, does Fatima just keep giving birth, or does somebody else keep giving birth to these monsters, right? But if that's the case and it works the first time, do you just keep creating these monsters, right? Now do you have like this army of monsters on your side? But you also have the risk of, raising a lion. At any point, that lion can turn on you. Is that something that is worth the risk for the town? Where it's like, like the monster baby is on our side for now, but for how long? Right? We've also seen people break. Like, what happens if a monster breaks? Or what happens if FROMVILLE starts targeting that monster and ends up manipulating that monster? And now FROMVILLE has an inside guy that can just tear through everybody, right? Does the monster only protect the ones that raise it? So, like, let's say Fatima and Ellis are the ones that raise it. Like, maybe they're off limits to that monster, but maybe that monster's like, hey, I need to eat. We need to eat people, right? Like what? Do you sacrifice people to the monster? Like, there's so many different directions in which that could go. And this is just kind of more of like an exploratory thought that I had in my head, right? Because we've seen like horror movies and tropes and stuff like that where, it's like, oh, we can keep the monster and turn the monster into our weapon, right? Like, hey, it would be great to have a monster on our side. So like if monsters attack, he can go and fight off the monsters for us. Right? And, you kind of raise and develop this monster. It's like, okay, well, at least we have one on our side. Plus, like, you look at Boyd. Like, Boyd wanted to capture a monster. Do these monsters have, like, connective mind, like a hive mind? Is there, like, things that, that all the monsters are kind of linked to? So maybe Boyd could get some information in that manner, in that way, where maybe this child monster can, like, link into the other monsters and kind of gather information or data or whatever. Or, maybe you kind of have a mole in the monster front, right? You raise the monster, ends up going in and infiltrating and gathering intel and comes back and relays it to you, right? Like, there's a lot of ways that you can kind of approach that. But also another big thing is that Elgin said that the baby helped them before, and that the baby is gonna help Boyd. Like, that's how they got out. That's how Boyd saved the town. Okay, well, how did Boyd save the town? Like, it was so, like, unexplained. Like, it was just kind of like, so, like, the baby's gonna get born, and then Boyd's gonna save the town with the baby. It's like, okay, well, can we get a little more detail here? Like, is there, like, how? Like, does Boyd keep the monster and save the monster? And, now the monster's loyal to Boyd, and the monster helps lead the charge. Maybe the monster kills all the monsters in the town, and then that monster, like, helps lead the charge to save the town. Like what happens here? Did Boyd and the monster do the fusion dance and end up fusing into one? Like, can we get a little more detail on the possibility of what the monster, or how the baby monster helps Boyd, right? Well, one thing that immediately popped in my head when that was like, okay, what if they keep the monster, right? What if Fatima gives birth to the monster, right? Ellis and Boyd show up. They grab Fatima as she has the baby. They hightail out of there, right? Fatima has the baby, and Boyd, Fatima, and Ellis kind of, grow or help to develop this baby and have it on Team Good, right? But also, would Boyd be willing to do that? Right? Like, you could see, because again, it's kind of a typical trope. Like, the mother still loves the baby, right? Like, or the parents still want to raise the baby, right? Like, it's just, that I don't think would be crazy, but like, would Boyd be game for that? Also, would the town be okay with that? Or do you kind of keep that a hush-hush secret, but you're not going to be able to keep that a hush-hush secret forever, right? At some point, you're going to have a full-fledged monster running around, it's just, at some point, that's going to have to be relayed to the town. So does the town buy into it? Does Boyd and them buy into it? I mean, your argument, if you're a Boyd, if you get Boyd on board, right? And Boyd kind of is like, okay, sure, right? Like, that's not a bad idea, whatever, right? Desperate times call for desperate measures, whatever. He talks himself into buying in. I mean, your argument could be like, okay, well, Fatima, Ellis, and the monster baby, they'll stay with me, right? We'll all stay in this place. So as long as you guys have the talismans and you guys just go about your business, you guys are good, right? We know that this monster is not going to be able to walk around during the day. We know that there's certain rules that this monster has to abide by, right? So, you guys are still safe. We'll take all the risk. But now we have this thing where if, push comes to shove, you open the cage and you let the monster loose, right? Like, that could be something that they could maybe get the town to buy into, which I don't think is a terrible idea, right? I mean, look, again, you just, even like humans are a product of their environment. What are the monsters kind of the same, right? Like, the monster at some point, you got to imagine, is still going to be a baby, right? It's still going to need that influence, still going to need that growth. Kind of like what Hellboy, right? You think of like Hellboy, right? If you've ever seen those movies and stuff, where it's just like, if you raise the baby with a loving family, right? Does that baby does it buy into the good? Does it buy into, like, hey, yeah, I have this monster on me, but look, I mean, these people love me anyway, right? Like, I need to protect these people, right? And now you have this child that can fight off the monsters and go toe-to-toe with these monsters, rather than, like, you just like, okay, well, how do we take out more? And then, like I said, like, if you take out more, like, could you end up with a whole army of monsters, right? And completely flip the page on these monsters, right? I mean, there's definitely some ways that they could go about this and kind of justify it, but I don't know. It was just kind of a thought that popped into my head, which, again, it's just typical trope, right? Typical movie trope, of, like, the monster baby's born and the parents love them anyway. So I was just kind of like, like, what if that happens? And, like, would it make sense to maybe keep the monster and buy into the monster and just kind of see what happens there? But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you think, yes, that's a great idea? You have the monsters. You use the monsters or use the monster, the baby monster, to grow, develop, right? Has a loving family, get it to buy into the good, and then now you take on the evil of this town, the monsters of this town, with your version of a good monster? Do you think, no, like that's a terrible idea, terrible disaster? Could you see that happening, but it's still a terrible idea, terrible disaster? Because I mean that always is a real possibility. But again, I feel whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it either way. Let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.